Now, you know, today I let that play extra long just to aggravate the boomers. And it never fails. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. I mean, we had one of the greatest of all time boomer comments. So much so that I added it to my social media today. Y'all saw that, right? This one. See that? This is great. It says 20 minutes into the Angels and Demons show. She says, help me understand this. I'm listening for 17 minutes. It's 18:20. He says he's not going to talk about the crypto, and he's still talking about it. What's his thing about time zones? How is he doing a lecture? It's 18 minutes to 49 seconds in, and he needs help, in my opinion. This boy needs a dab of Prozac, a dab of Virginia Slim, and a box of wine. 19 minutes in. So she's like 30 seconds later. He's still talking about crypto. 20 minutes, 28 seconds. So she just talked 1 minute later. I would not want to be in the same room with this guy. He frightens me. Boo! 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 Boomer! Boo! 21 minutes in. What is his lecture about? I love it when people are like, what's he doing? What is this? Whoa, what is it? I can't take it anymore. I thrive on annoying the boomers. Y'all ought to know that if you was a boomer right now. And hell, it's your dang generation that gave the synthesizer. What are you talking about? Boomers don't know about. You ever listen to a Pink Floyd song? You ever seen that old Pink Floyd boomer? That one dude? What's his name? Nicky Nickerson? I don't know what his. I forget his. The boomer for Pink Floyd that plays the keyboard. Going off for 30 minutes. Have you ever listened to Led Zeppelin, boomers? Remember that? There's Led Zeppelin songs with like 30-minute keyboard jibber jabbers going on. What's that one? You know what I'm talking about. What's all this keyboard synthesizer? I can't take it. The synthesizer. It's like crypto. Crypto is boomer crypto night, dude. I just figured it out. Cryptos are boomer crypto night. It's like super boomer over there. I'm like, I'm going to send you some Dogecoin. I'm going to send you some Ether. I'm going to send you some Chainlink. And that boomer's over there crying like, what? How are you going to send me a Ponzi scheme? How are you going to send me something that's out of thin air? How could you gonna send the money through the air into this block of plastic? What? Synthesizers, crypto Ponzi schemes. I might as well be getting an email from Bernie Madoff. The hell is this cat? Where's your stock portfolio, boy? What is she? How does she not know? By the way, I don't act half as spurgy as freaking Jerry Lewis. You ever watch Jerry Lewis? Which is unwatchable, by the way. All that dude does is spurg out. And every boomer, I love that Jerry Lewis. I grew up with him. He's so funny. I love that Robin Williams. I grew up, I was a little kid watching Robin. And all he does is like just say random shit like and do these weird voices. He's like a bad version of me. Right? Because at least what I do is a little bit high IQ. A little bit. I got it because if it's too high IQ, none of y'all will like it. Y'all be like, what's going on? His jokes are in the ether. He's coordinated the blockchain of his joke in the ether with Ethereum in that ethereal blockchain. I don't even know what's going on. So I got to make it a little bit high IQ because we got a high IQ audience, right? Well, the boomers are just like, what? I like that Robin Williams. He's funny. He talks about penises falling off and he does all them voices where he just goes all what? That stuff out of here. That stuff is dumb, dude. Dumb. Who could sit and could you imagine watching? I tried one time to watch Robin Williams for like 10 minutes. And I was like, what is going on? What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And one time I dropped my peanuts on the floor.
Oh, did you drop your penis on the floor?
Oh, I dropped my peanuts on the floor.
Well, did you pick it up, sir?
All right, I picked up my penis off the floor and I put it back on.
Yeah, did you right?
It's like, what? That's my impression of Robin. I can't do a Robin Williams voice because he's just talking in a million different voices back and forth. It's like the alters are talking back and forth or something.
I like that Jerry Lewis.
I've never even seen a Jerry Lee Lewis movie. I've seen like one clip of. Is that funny? I don't think so. But apparently, if you're above freaking 55, that's the funniest thing in the world. Did you see that face he made? He went. And he had one of the beanies. Beanies with a propeller. Is that funny? You sure about that? Pretty sure it's not, dude. Boomer humor, dude. What? And they come here and they're like, he's going to try to send me a crypto email of Ethereum from a Bernie Madoff address to get me involved in a Ponzi scheme with a wallet. He don't know the difference between a wallet and a phone. That ain't a wallet. That's a damn phone, son. Proof of work. I'll show you proof of work. It's called a damn pay stub. Anyway, we're here to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer. Get it? Because he didn't care for the mouth of Isis. He cared for the extension pole of Osiris. I don't know what do you call the male thing. He cared for the male thing. Is what we're gonna say. But sad, tragic tale. We're gonna get into that here in a minute. But you know what we do around here? We like to act crazy. We like to have fun. We joke around, and you gotta have fun. You gotta have fun today, because it's a rough day today, wasn't it? Now, if you know what you're doing, or kind of halfway know what you're doing, I wouldn't say I know what I'm doing. You know, cryptos was tough today, but you can mitigate those days with certain safe strategies. And y'all know I have some safe strategies, which we've talked about before. And by the way, yes, I'm not sure why that wallet lists, I double checked that like 10 times. That wallet lists Chainlink address the same as Ethereum. Something's up with that. But that is the Ethereum address for sure. So we'll hold off on Chainlink. But so if you do want to support, I did add the crypto addresses. We used to have those crypto addresses in there, and people don't send cryptos much. You know what I mean? Which is fine, because I guess we're still in that early phase, where people are accumulating. which is makes sense, right? This is still early for the world of crypto, and today's dump was rough, but hey, this happens. I've lived through multiple dumps and crashes, so and it's not that big of a deal. If you've been through a bunch of these, if you have properly allocated your portfolio, if you have some exit strategies just in case, then nothing to worry about. In fact, dumps are opportunities. That's what I said today. Dumps are opportunities. If you're willing to be a little risky, play it smart with your risks. You're not risking a lot. I picked up 1,000 Matic today in these dumps. I picked up 300 mana in the dumps. So people was dumping their cryptos, and it was over there in the yard sale. I went over to the yard sale and I said, I'll pick up some of this cheap Polygon right here that's cheap right now. So I picked it up. I'm saying I dumped my Polygon and then picked up Polygon. You see what I'm saying? So that's risky, but I had a little bit to risk with, and I don't care. Done it enough. And people were like, "Are you freaking out, dude? Are you freaking out of it?" No, I'm not freaking out. I mean, it's not fun to see the gains drop, but if you've been in this game, dog, been in a crypto game for a while, this is nothing, dude. Nothing to worry about. Now, and by the way, even if we did tank, if Bitcoin tanked to, even if it tanked to 20, dude, I would be buying it. I would. I'm not joking. I'd be buying it. I sold 0 Bitcoin today. Now, if we got down to 20, I might think about it. No, if it looked like we were heading down to 20, I might think about selling only to do what I just did with Polygon, which was to buy right back in a few hours after the dump. In fact, I almost did that last night, but I'm glad I didn't. That's really risky. So you only do that if you got some room to play with. So anyway, played it safe today, minimized losses, stacked a little bit of mana and Polygon on the way down, and that's what you do if you wanna make a little bag, a little sack like little Jeffrey had, little Jeffrey sack, a little sack. Now, when Jeffrey was a kid, he cut the head off of a squirrel and put it on a post. Yes, he did, which was weird. So that's something's going on with Jeffrey. Let's talk about Jeffrey. Your boy Joffrey. Joffrey Dahmer. Out of that Game of Thrones, Game of Bones from Joffrey Dahmer. If you would, hit like and share. You can drop me a little super chat there in the Streamlabs there. Super chats are through Streamlabs. If you don't know, please hit like and share. Welcome everybody. Yeah, I would say hold. I mean, well, number one, don't ever sell your Bitcoin. Very, very rare cases would I do that. Very, very rare. And I would only do that to acquire more. Where are we at? Joffrey Dahmer. Oh, good news. Today, big show today. Your boy Sean Atwood over there on the Sean Atwood channel. Huge true crime podcast. We just did over an hour. Sean had me back on. Now, last year with Sean, we got, 120,000 views on that show from last year. It was the Bomb Biggity, baby. We just did an hour a few hours ago. And I was like, yes, baby. Yes. Love talking to Sean because Sean has had a crazy life. Your boy Sean Atwood has had a crazy life. Crazy stories. And we got into Jeffrey Dahmer, and we got into the mafia, and we got into Hollywood, and we got into some. We got Savile and Epstein. We did Savile, Epstein, Jeffrey Dahmer, and the mafia. And hey, Sean knows what he's talking about. Sean was the former ecstasy man at the raves. The raves in the 90s in Phoenix. He was running a ring. The ecstasy ring. So if you're not familiar with Sean Atwood, one of the best true crime channels, probably the best true crime channel. I can't think of anybody who's got better stuff on there. I mean, I listen to a few other channels, but Sean's is pretty good. Probably the best, right? So go over to Sean Atwood's, check out his stuff. We even batted around the idea of an in-person interview. So if all this fake and gray COVID nonsense could ever end, we could fly over to the UK, go meet up with your boy Lewis too. Maybe even meet up with Sneck. And do in-studio long interviews at Sean's nice little studio, podcast studio that he's got set up. That would be fun. So we had an invite to do that. We might do that. We'll see. We'll see. If we could ever get rid of all this Bo Jiden's COVID nonsense and Klaus Schwab and Gil Bates' COVID nonsense, we could delete that. Then, yeah, we could do all that. That'd be fun. But look for that show. Sean will have that up in the next week. So 1 week from now, Sean Atwood channel, 1+ hour heavy hitting interview with yours truly. Let's get into Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, one thing that I pointed out with Sean that nobody has talked about, and I noticed this because I used to work at a paint store. There's a big Kim connection to the MK Ultra stuff, the mind control stuff that almost nobody has caught. And I would venture to say that you could probably, if you're a diehard Spurgy McSpurgston researcher, if you wanted to dig up some unconnected dots, Big Kim, Big Chemical, and MK Ultra and LSD go together. And this is the case with, man, I can't see this. The big pharmaceuticals that rely on the chemists that work for the big companies, right? Because that's there's a connect there between the big chemistry companies, big chemical companies, and the big pharmaceutical companies, you see. And I say that because Jeffrey Dahmer's dad worked for PPG Paints, famously, as a chemist. Now, I'm not saying that the paint company has anything necessarily directly connected to MK Ultra or anything like that, but as a chemist, he knew what he was doing with chemicals. And if you have watched I've watched countless hours of interviews. I watched all the Lowfield's channel's interviews. Many of those, by the way, are lengthy interviews with Dahmer Sr., Dahmer Jr., and Dahmer's mom. And there is conflicting stories between Dahmer's dad and Dahmer's mom. So that something's up because they have completely different stories of the upbringing. She has no memory of taking pills while she was pregnant with Jeffrey. He admits to giving her pills because of her fits. So she would have fits. So part of the story or speculation as well, perhaps Jeffrey had some sort of fetal alcohol syndrome or fetal damage due to the fact that Mama Dahmer was on pills. Mama Dahmer was on the pills. Now, another thing that comes up interesting in the history of the family is that Father Dahmer had an intense interest in hypnosis. Okay. Now that's odd. Most dads are not interested in hypnosis. I mean, I don't know if dads typically into that. When you think of dadcore, you don't think of hypnosis. You think of braided belts and jorts and button-up shirts and polo shirts and boat shoes and Bob Seger music. That's dadcore. You don't think of hypnosis. You don't think of Svengali when you're thinking of dadcore. And yet we've already got weird things going on. Now, let me also show you this that I noticed. These are all incident. This is not the substantial deep. We're going to get to the deep stuff. These are just kind of the weird out there on the surface things that we know with Jeffrey. And this is one I came across I had missed. Now this is weird. Check this out. I can't see why as a parent you would dress your children up this way. This is weird to me. Really weird. So here's young Jeffrey and his brother. And who would put... This is just weird. Like, what kind of shirt is this, dude? I was thinking, okay, maybe this relates to some a cartoon from this 70s period, but I can't think of what it would be, and I don't know of that, and that's just weird, right? It's just bizarre. Why would you dress up young Jeffrey in devil duds, right? Doesn't make any sense. And Jeffrey also, here is the squirrel that I mentioned. I wasn't joking about this. So we have the squirrel on a pole, right? There's that. Be careful here. I don't want to put up something too edgy. There's some things we're going to look at too in his apartment that are going to be really very relevant, which you probably heard me talk about. But those are a couple things to keep in mind. And obviously this one, which we have mentioned in the past, this is a huge piece of the puzzle. And I think I need to pull out my, where did I stick that? Crap, I'll never find that. Maybe I can. The cable. Now, I think if you go and watch the first show, you'll see it. It's like a cable from the U.S. military squashing the investigation into Jeffrey when he was being investigated in terms of the German murders. It's that is in the first talk. Here it is. Let's see. Just give me 1 second, because this is relevant to what we want to talk about. But I have to find it because this is a really rare item that nobody turned up right here. This was some obscurity of obscurity right here. Here it is. Found it. Now, again, I can't prove the veracity of this. It looks real to me, and it looks like some kind of cable, right, from the embassy typed out to another embassy or to military cable. And this is another key piece here. And we'll look at some other ones. I tweeted a couple this week, but right. So there's that. So these are going to be some key pieces of the data that have turned up that nobody seems to know about. But so let's get into Jeffrey. Now, the young Jeffrey in the 70s here was reportedly abused by an older teen when he was young, right? So when he was a kid, I don't remember the age, 7, 8, 9, there was an older teenage dude in the neighborhood supposedly that abused him. So that's part of the story that is mentioned in some of the accounts of young Dahmer's life. Probably stands to reason. We don't have any explicit evidence. In fact, Jeffrey denied that his dad was involved in any abuse. However, I mean, there's just curious things about this family life that are just weird. Now, I know everybody has weird, dysfunctional family lives, but the dad's into hypnotism, had a fascination with fire, explosive, bomb making, and then we already see these red flags with a young Jeffrey who withdraws, becomes very antisocial, kind of the typical things that you would expect of a future killer type teen, including alcoholism. So he had developed, by the time of high school, a pretty severe addiction to alcohol, and began upping the ante with not just the obsession and collection of the animal carcasses, which had been going on for a while. And he had a shed out back where he would stick them all, and he would just totally fascinated with their decomposition and that kind of stuff. And his dad seemed to sort of overlook all this, which is just odd. I mean, the dad always acts like, well, I guess we should have seen something, but we just thought, well, and then you get this sort of mental breakdown of the mom, and she doesn't even attend, I think, Jeffrey's high school graduation. His dad had moved out, wasn't around because of the mom's mental issues. So big time dysfunction. Hard to say what else is going on. Another thing that was odd too was that Jeffrey, when he was a kid, had invented this little game that he would play for hours with little stick people, and he would draw spirals, and the stick people could disappear into Infinity Land, which is just bizarre. And it's drawing a lot of spirals, which is curious. You see the t-shirts that he's wearing. Again, circumstantial. That doesn't prove that there was any ritual cult abuse, but bizarre nonetheless. Now, when we get into more serious issues as he gets older, we have the belief that, well, let me point out something that Dave mentions in his book. Early Jeffrey seems just like, we're talking about when he's in high school here. He has the ability, like John Wayne Gacy, to make a phone call and get his whole visiting high school class in to see the vice president, which I think is questionable. Now, is it plausible that a random teen could call the vice president's office and set up a on-the-spot meeting? It's possible. But it does seem odd, right? I mean, once again, serial killers tend to have these connections. And again, that could also be coincidence. It could just be that, now he didn't actually meet Walter Mondale, but he would, if Walter Mondale had been there that day, he would have met him, because they just brought his class at the call of Jeffrey Dahmer into vice president's office, which is just bizarre. And they got, his class got the VP tour by Jeffrey Dahmer making a phone call. That's just weird. Dave goes on to note after this that a girl who dated Jeffrey briefly during their senior year of high school recalled that one day a seance was conducted at Jeffrey's home. Someone in the group had suggested that it might be a good idea to try to contact Satan during the seance. The girl made a hasty exit from the house, and just after Jeffrey's graduation in 1978, his parents filed for a divorce. Then it says, Both of them accused the other parent of extreme cruelty. Jeffrey later claimed that he had killed for the first time during that summer, but no evidence was ever produced to support this claim. The identity of the purported victims were determined by having Dahmer choose a selection of photographs of boys who had been reported missing around that time period. So nobody knows for sure if this was actually the case, but that's what he claims, was this was the period. Now, Jeffrey enrolled in Ohio State University and attended for the 1 quarter before being taken into military recruitment, talked into it by his father. Now, this is where we get into the suspicious details, right? Now, it could be, oh, well, everybody, a lot of dads want their sons to be in the military. My dad was that way. Oh, son, you need to be in the military. Not interested, didn't want to do that. So it could just be that, but maybe, Dahmer's dad thought, well, this will straighten him out. This kind of a thing. So Dahmer did enter the military in 1979, and key point, like Gary Heidnik, other famed serial killer Gary Heidnik, Dahmer sought training as a military policeman, but was instead made a medic. Now, he already has a long time proclivity for carcasses and carving things up, and the military is sticking him as a medic. I mean, if you were in the hospital, would you want this dude working on you? I mean, this is a little odd, and presumably they might have had some idea of his psychological profile, right? He completed his training in the summer solstice and was then assigned to West Germany at a military hospital. It's a psychiatric hospital, military medical psychiatric facility. Dahmer was processed out of the service at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, 1981. His release date came early, allegedly due to chronic alcoholism, but it was an honorable discharge with full benefits. Now, this is right after 2 key points to remember here. Dahmer is discharged, and there's people who tell the stories of him, coming in at night, passing out drunk. And if you don't know, there were murders around the base in Germany at that time, multiple brutal murders. And the German government was interested in investigating Dahmer later on down the road when it became known that he was a killer. And so you see this, what is apparently a cable. Olympia, Washington contacted the German consulate, suite, whatever, told the consulate that he was in the same U.S. Army unit as Dahmer, served with him at Baumholder, Germany, area 1978, allegedly showed the consulate an article published by the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, which stated that Dahmer was guilty of several murders near Germany, claimed that he had evidence that would link Dahmer to 5 murders near this region. Blank stated that he had never furnished any information about this to the U.S. authorities because a high-ranking Army officer was connected to these homicides. Well, there you go. Well, that is pretty powerful, striking, unknown evidence right there. I mean, that's wild. And again, this is 30 minutes. I looked it up on Google Maps. It's 30 minutes from the facility that another serial killer was stationed at, Gary Heidnik. Unbelievable. Now with Gary, and we're going to do separate streams on Leonard Lake, Charles Ng, and Gary Heidnik, because they have masses of crazy stuff on that deserve their own streams. But Gary was actually used in MK Ultra. So we have somebody almost around the same time period, 20 or 30 minutes at another military facility. So in other words, if this is a CIA thing, then what the U.S. military is doing is taking these loons that are profiled, trucking them over to Germany, to U.S. bases in Germany, probably CIA-connected facilities there, and training them and doing who knows what. And that's exactly what happened to Gary Heidnik. And if you don't know, Gary Heidnik, when he came back from his service, immediately set up a cult. I mean, he was gone, dude. This guy was totally lunatic, just gone. We're talking like, what's his name? Freaking Jim Jones level stuff, right? By the way, there's a lot of parallels between Gary Heidnik and Jim Jones, which is fascinating. But so back to Jeffrey. Now, because of the alleged abuse, obviously we are, we get the impression that Dahmer had developed, homoerotic things, right? Donger, Joffrey Donger. By the way, you can support via Super Chats. And this will also, we will get into details that we didn't get into, by the way, in part 2 of this talk concerning Sons of Sam. Yes, I know. The Netflix thing is out, which isn't this all weird, right? We've been covering this stuff recently. I'm not saying Netflix is watching my channel, but it's interesting that this is all everywhere now. And serial killers are the hottest thing or whatever. But, we've been talking about Maury Terry's book for a long time. And, they put out this documentary on Maury Terry's book on Netflix. That's just crazy. And so Berkowitz information has come out of accomplices, right? Gacy information coming out of accomplices. Well, guess what? Other people have accomplices too. In fact, interesting theory I read yesterday. What if Dahmer, and this is in the CavDef, if you don't know, CavDef has a giant archive of links and information on, well, a lot of things, but on serial killers. And I read through all the Dahmer stuff there the other day, but the interesting point with this is that I just lost my train of thought. Oh, by the way, we'll get to the process cult, and there's actually a process connection to Dahmer, which is wild. Theory posited here by one of the authors, the author of the book about the murder of Adam Walsh, the America's Most Wanted guy, his son. Dahmer's training in cadavers, medicine, and cutting up tummies and all that stuff, that could have been for organ trade. Interesting theory. Now, don't know that, but you see. Perhaps this high-level general that he's working with, military person, army person, perhaps they were involved in a organ trade ring, as well as many other things, right? Because remember, these in this domain, it's not exclusive. It's not mutually exclusive, right? Perhaps there are occultists. Perhaps there are organ trade. Perhaps there are SNUFF proponents going. All that stuff can be going on, and there's even going to be an SNUFF component. It would appear with your boy Joffrey Donger. Now, Jeffrey went to, after getting out of the service, where does he go? Florida. We know the serial killers, they love Florida. They love to go down to the Miami Keys area. Multiple killers. Multiple weird things going on in Florida. The Gainesville Ripper. Murders unsolved down in the Keys. Dahmer going down to Miami. Ted Bundy going to Florida. One person's theory, a few people's theory is that just like with Henry Lee Lucas, who also I believe went to Florida for a time period, there are networked and connected cults and killers in these areas. That's what's going on. Some people think. Now, I don't know if that's what Jeffrey was doing per se, but it's possible. And it's also possible with Ted and the others as well. Another interesting detail that comes up with Jeffrey is a detail that Dave notes similar to Ed Kemper. If you don't know, Ed Kemper is another famous serial killer. Which is that they're supposed to have regular contact with their parole officer, and yet, for some strange reason, they never did. No record of contact, Dave says, with his parole officer during the killing spree, just like Ed Kemper had no contact with his parole officer either. Again, just bizarre. An interesting detail. But then, of course, we know that he leaves Miami and ends up, obviously he had frequented a lot of the gay bars in Miami, and then goes back to Milwaukee. Had a few minor arrests and murders, fines, these kinds of things. In 1988, he ends up back in Milwaukee with his apartment. Now, this is interesting because he interacts with a person named Brother John. And I'm not necessarily imputing ill motives to this person, but the reason it's relevant is because this Brother John character supposedly would minister to the gay community in Wisconsin. And he was a former Berkowitz associate. Whoa. Whoa. Right? So here we have a son of Sam person, Brother John, who ends up in Milwaukee as an associate. Now, we don't know exactly to what degree. We don't know if they were hanging out, but they would, he claims, had multiple long conversations. And Brother John claims that he was there to minister to him and help him with his alcoholism and other problems. Right? Because the story is, well, Dahmer had all this rage and anger issues. But again, this is very important because this is a person directly out of the Berkowitz Son of Sam cult, which, if you don't know, the theory is here with Maury Terry and others that the Son of Sam cult functions as a multi-use thing for prawn, contract killing, ritual murder, mind control, because the claim is that it's a group of people that were raised to be these killers, right? Sons of Sam. Sam as in sons of Uncle Sam, killers for Uncle Sam, or sons of Sam as in Samael, right? And we know, of course, I think everybody knows about Berkowitz's connections to Process Church and all that, right? So we have a direct link to Dahmer and the Process via Brother John Paul Ranieri. This was mentioned in Maury Terry's discussion of Berkowitz. He was He was also the same man in Milwaukee who told the police that he frequently talked to Dahmer in the bars and claimed that Dahmer was killing because he had all this pent-up anger after he left the military and went to Miami Beach. There was a chapter of the Process Church founded in Miami in the 70s, and Dahmer was there in 1981, I believe. Google Images can show you that where you see Ranieri's, quote, church constructed in his backyard, had a curtain with an altar in the Milwaukee area, claimed to be a street preacher, and then Ranieri is mentioned in multiple books about Dahmer. Ranieri claims to have been the person that threw the first bottle during the Stonewall riots in 1969 and was a former homosexual, as many of the Sons of Sam occultists were. New York Times, John Paul Ranieri says he met Dahmer in a tavern and would have drinks with him and had recently befriended him. Ranieri is a former New York male prostitute, recovering drug addict. He had a street ministry in the Milwaukee area that served the gay community for more than 10 years. Barb Klauber, secretary of the Episcopal Diocese, said Ranieri's ministry was financed by donations from the Milwaukee church areas, including the Episcopal Diocese. Why is that relevant? Well, who did John David Norman and his associates, including, what was it, Troop 137? They were all out of the Episcopal Diocese. Yeah, exactly. When you see Episcopal, red flags rise and you run. And that comes up in Clown and Candyman, right? If you watch Clown and Candyman, it's John David Norman and another guy that was his associate, right? And then, so they cover the Boys Farm in Tennessee, which was an Episcopal front, Troop 137 or 127, either whatever it is, that was a famous case of all this PEDO stuff. And it had the former CIA guy, and I think the connection to Episcopal ministries. Now, again, I don't know exactly. This is just details that people have connected together that are almost completely overlooked. I mean, people have just, this is almost unknown. Now, somebody put a quote in this CavDef article which alleges some kind of abuse. And it doesn't say where this quote is from, so I can't. This is speculative, which claims that there was a dalliance between Dahmer and Ranieri. But it doesn't have a source, so I don't know what to make of that. Unless the source is the previous quote, the Dahmer detective interrogation and investigation that shocked the world by Patrick Kennedy and Robin Maharaj. The Maharaja of Pankow. Zalim Singh. His Majesty, the Maharaja of Pankow. I always thought that the thugging stories were told to frighten children. I made a vow that would never happen in my kingdom ever again. This is some thuggy level stuff, isn't it, though? What we're talking about. Jeffrey Dahmer's like he's like Mola Ram. He's like the modern day Mola Ram. By the way, there's an article that talks about could Dahmer have had some kind of Aztec priest mindset? Because in his apartment, he's got little Aztec looking demon and head thing. We'll look at those pictures in a minute. And yes, Dahmer was interested in occultism. I can't really figure out what occult tradition he may have been into. I don't. No actual authors or books come up that I'm aware of. But again, this brother John figure is relevant, and it's because he's, to be specific, close friend and classmate of none other than John Carr. And John Carr, of course, plays hugely in the Berkowitz Son of Sam story. Carr, by the way, was from the Air Force. Brother John's last encounter with the group, the Berkowitz Son of Sam group, took place with his old friend John Carr in a Manhattan bistro in 1972. Carr was in the Air Force, and the pair had not talked for several years. Brother John was better served by the lack of communication because Carr told him that night would propel Brother John from the sidewalks of New York to a new life in the Midwest. Right? Because I guess there was going to be a murder and they'd have to leave, presumably. Another odd detail was an article that turned up from 2015 about Brother John. No, a 1984 photo of a construction crew. John Paul Ranieri plans to build an art studio and gallery in his backyard. Not sure what to make of that other than it's a bizarre detail, except that the article mentions he had met and hung out with Dahmer. And, this is the crazy detail. In 1983, John Paul Ranieri went to Rome and shook the hand of John Paul II at St. Peter's Square. I mean, this is crazy. So, by the way, that's not the only contract cult serial killer crazy person to have met John Paul. In fact, John Paul the Pope. We just covered Savile receiving his papal knighthood from John Paul II. Interesting. Now, granted, a lot of people meet the Pope, but to serial killer creeps meeting the Pope, and I made the argument that it looks like Savile was probably a serial killer. He was investigated under suspicion, by the way, of being a serial killer because of being BFF with 3 serial killers. I mean, come on, right? Bodies turning up in his yard, but he's protected and gets off. He even bragged about being protected. Now, if you're familiar with this domain, then I'm sure you've heard of Jim Rothstein, the famous detective. Now, according to Rothstein, Vernon Seitz also had some degree of knowledge of or acquaintance with Dahmer, as well as the son of Sam Colt. And that's relevant because Vernon Seitz, if you go look him up, claimed to have killed, although they didn't find any bodies, but they did find in his creepy house a trove of illicit prawn and BDSM type stuff. So in other words, in these circles of people into the weird stuff, it always the nasty stuff. It always seems to connect to networks that are using these different groups. Is what I'm trying to say. And it's not accidental that Dahmer, right, has met multiple creeps and killers. I mean, it's just crazy. Well, at least 2. Maybe not multiple, but at least 2. And another interesting element that we find with this is the bizarre artistic presentation and portrayal of the usage of the corpse. I don't mean to be morbid here, but as you know from the case with Man Ray, we've covered Man Ray, Black Dahlia. There's a famous book, Exquisite Corpse, which is about Man Ray and the Black Dahlia situation. And as you know, with Dahmer, there was this fascination with not just cutting up the cadavers, but placing the body in weird, twisted formations, which Man Ray was very into, by the way, apparently as well. And whoever did the Black Dahlia case, which was probably him and his cronies. And if you aren't familiar, I'm not going to show it, but there is the image of what Dahmer did with the body, kind of twisting it. And of course, in the Podesta art, you've probably seen the pictures that discuss those odd similarities. And it's just odd as well that John Paul Ranieri is also involved in this art world as well. But again, I'm not alleging necessarily anything. We don't know. It's just, these are just connections. Okay. And again, like any detective, I'm not a detective, but any detective or person studying this, they would be looking at the criminal's associates. Who's he spending time with? Who's he hanging out with? If people are hanging out with other serial killers, then that's probably relevant. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's an obvious detail that's relevant to a case, don't you think? Another thing that comes up in the Adam Walsh book, by the way, freaking flying here, dude. It's driving me crazy. It's the spirit of Jeffrey Dahmer flying around. Joffrey Dahmer. Now, this is a different book. The Unsolved Murder of Adam Walsh, J. Harris, 2016, explores the idea given to him by Billy Capshaw that Dahmer killed people not just for creepy reasons, but perhaps because of being involved in the organ trade. This would explain why Dahmer had such an extensive medical knowledge, especially more than would have been expected of a person who was age 19 or 20, which he learned when he was in the military. This could have even allowed for him to have the pass from his military superiors. And the book notes that this true crime book by J. Harris notes that Arthur J. Harris, Dahmer had accomplices. Interesting. Well, that's what the cable says, doesn't it? Dahmer had accomplices. And again, that comes up in almost all these, right? Dahmer didn't. It wasn't just Dahmer, right? We know multiple cases where there are admitted accomplices. Charles Lake, Leonard Lake, Charles Ng, Otis Toole, Henry Lee Lucas, accomplices. Well, yeah. In many other cases, there are claims of accomplices. Let's see. Of course, the other bizarre incidents with Dahmer include the Laotian boy who escaped Dahmer's apartment, and the police just told him to go back. Right? Because, right, sometimes the theory is posited that some of the serial killers might in fact be local killers working with or protected by not just higher-ups, but the police. And by the way, being protected also means accomplice, right? An accomplice doesn't just mean a person out there hauling around the bodies with you. An accomplice can also be a person above you who allows it or orders it, if it's a contract. So as a result of this police gaffe, the mother of the victim sues the police department, 1991. Mother of the man Jeffrey Dahmer admitted to murdering sues three police officers. And I think over at programtokill.net, he makes an argument that there's a connection between the Laotian boy sent the phone. That's the last name of this family of Laotians who were immigrants. This relates supposedly to world vision. Ah, yes. And if you don't know, world vision is implicated in many of these stories of shady activities going on. Cutouts, fronts. We have Dan Mitrione, isn't right under the situation of world vision, CIA operative, and Mark David Chapman. Right? Am I correct in that? It's Mark David Chapman working with World Vision, and they were actually studying indigenous religions. Because if I recall, Mark David Chapman had a period of evangelical conversion. I think that's right. It's been a while since I've looked at the Mark David Chapman story, but you see the point here is that you have these immigrants. Now, again, that's also could be circumstantial, could be just, but there are definite shady connections with World Vision. Let's see if there's anything else. Now, we also, by the way, can't overlook the possibility that Dahmer was killed intentionally in prison, right? Because obviously he doesn't make it out of prison. And then here is a video that details some of the interviews. I think that's it. Relating to the guards who were there when Dahmer was killed in prison. Now, yeah, you'll get people saying, well, yeah, but so what? That doesn't matter because, right, everybody knows that when you go to prison, you get taken care of if you are a child abuser person. Okay, but, I mean, that doesn't mean that you can't be taken care of also because perhaps you are part of a ring or a contract killer or something else, organ trade, or who knows what, right? So there's some curious questions about the murder of Dahmer in prison as well, which could mean that he was being taken care of, taken out. Here we go with the apartment. You'll notice there the little demon guy, which again, maybe it's just a decoration. But if you looked at Dahmer's apartment in the photos, there's not much in there, right? I mean, it's not like he was going for some fancy aesthetic. There's like hardly anything in there. And you've got this little demon guy, and you've got this horned face Aztec. It's hard. I don't know if it's the Green Man. Is it just decor? Is it supposed to signify a demon? We don't know. But that's definitely a demon. And then, yes, in the top corner, you have inside Dahmer's living room a security camera. And there you go. I mean, these are just astounding details that seem to be just totally overlooked, and people don't even think that's relevant. And again, what would the camera be there for? Well, could be multiple things. Could be people who get off on these things. Prawn could be SNUFF. Could be proof that you did what you were supposed to do, right? In terms of a contract killer. Let's see. See if there's any more details I missed in. I don't think there's anything else in that. Oh, now a couple other incidents that come up with Dahmer that are curious, which suggest the demonic, is that he had, the story is, a obsession with the movie Exorcist 3. And this is the weird one, right, with the Gemini killer who is possessed by a spirit. And so the spate of murders that the killer's doing in Exorcist 3 is because there's a demon that's like possessing different people to do the same things, right? If you've not seen Exorcist 3, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? And supposedly, Dahmer would just watch this movie and rock back and forth obsessively. Now, again, that to me suggests the demonic, right? And of course, the most obvious thing, which we pointed out early on, was this. This isn't his actual sketch. If you look at his actual sketch, it's very crude. But this is what he was going for, right? So this is somebody else drew this, but his actual sketch of his power altar is what he called it, would look like this. And this would be skulls of victims. And then the orbs are these blue lights. I don't know why he thought that they wanted to have blue orbs, but that's what he thought. So that's his power altar there, which I don't know that, again, it's just straight up like he seemed to believe that he got metaphysical power out of eating his victims. which, I mean, that's just straight up demonic, occultic, just straight up, right? So there is this element, and this has been pretty much ignored and overlooked in the realm of Dahmer. There was another detail I wanted to point out about, I tweeted it. I can't find it. It's in the Cav Duff article, but it says this about Dahmer. I'll give you the source too. From page 329 of Unsolved Murder of Adam Walsh, Book 2, Finding the Victim by Arthur J. Harris. But Billy now thinks that his Army unit had a military intelligence role. He told me about a visit to his room from two guys with suits and non-military haircuts who had demonstrated survival skills and techniques in extreme conditions. He assumes that they were CIA or something like that. Dahmer acted like he was friends with them. Interesting. So you see these little nuggets and details are like floating out there in these stories and cases, and they're like totally overlooked, totally covered up, totally overlooked. I mean, don't you think having a drawing of this is relevant? Don't you think the cable is relevant? I would think so. But who has ever heard any of the so-called mainstream documentaries and stories ever talk about any of this? Of course not, right? Of course not. All right, so let's see. I got a few more notes on Dahmer, and then we'll do some super chats. By the way, I hope you're enjoying the stream. A lot of interesting details and information. If you are into this, please support the stream with a like and a share. You can support in the show description via crypto. You can also support via super chats. Super chats are via Streamlabs now. So do that there in that link. If you're looking for the archived interviews and videos, I'll put a link to this. I don't know who made that updated fancy drawing. If you go look at Jeffrey's actual drawings, they're just really crude, but they look like that. Let's see. Let's go through a recap here. Jeffrey's mom was on pills while pregnant. Some suggest that could have damaged him. Like Gary Heidnik, Jeffrey was stationed at a military hospital in Germany about 20 or 30 minutes away, and we know Gary Heidnik was confirmed to have been involved in MKUltra, another serial killer and cult leader. We have to keep in mind also the Phoenix program, right? We don't know that Dahmer was involved in the Phoenix program, but he would not be the first cannibal military recruit. The Phoenix program already had cannibal recruits via this plan to terrorize the Viet Cong with serial killers and maniacs and cannibals. So again, not outside the realm of possibility if we already have the military doing this prior to Dahmer's recruitment via the Phoenix program. So they would have, if he had been profiled, then he would have been seen as someone. There's a useful young boy, right? That young man has a lot of potential. Let's turn him into a suicidal maniac killer. Put him to work for Uncle Sam. Dahmer then could have had, going back, fetal alcohol syndrome. Dahmer's dad claims that the mom would have seizures, and that he would have to give her morphine and pills to sedate her during her episodes. Jeffrey, as a kid, was taken to certain hospitals for his medical conditions and given injections. Now, we don't know what that was. We don't know why. Was it just booster shots? What were his medical conditions? Well, it had to do with what they thought might have been fetal alcohol syndrome, but who knows what? they shot him up with, right? We don't know. But that could be significant to why he turned out who he was. Now, by the way, remember we did Millennium. X-Files spinoff, Millennium. What was the whole plot? Spoiler alert, of Millennium. Human experimentation, genetic modification. Oops, sometimes, yes, we got really high IQ kids as a result of this. Oops, sometimes we created crazed serial killers. Yes, that's the whole narrative of Millennium. It's the whole story. Jeffrey tells, hernia, that's what it is. Hernia operations when he was 4. Many injections. After these operations, he was isolated and withdrawn. And as a child, Jeffrey claimed that he thought they were cutting off his male member. After this, he begins to dismember animals into parts. He becomes obsessed with skulls. He began, of course, with killing animals and dogs. Neighbors claimed that there was satanic abuse in the area. The neighbors claimed this. Now, again, we don't know if that included him, but there is a claim of this in the area of Dahmer. Dahmer's dad claims there was no sexual abuse. Some claim that a neighborhood older teen had abused him. The dad accused the mom of neglect and insanity. There is a character who comes up later on one of the talk shows who goes by the name of Nick. And Nick is relevant because he claims that when they were friends, him and Dahmer, and they were lovers, he claims for a while, that Dahmer claimed to him that his dad had abused him. So there's conflicting stories here. We don't know if this Nick person, of course, is reliable. He's just a guy who turned up and claimed to have been an associate and lover of Dahmer, and claimed that Dahmer told him that his dad had abused him. And if that's the case, there we go. Now we know what that would be, a big puzzle piece to what's going on here. But of course, his dad denies this, and I think in some of the interviews later on, Dahmer denied this. So it could be conflicting stories. I don't know. Military problem, police, medical, military recruitment. Could have been sheep dipped. Was he being trained as a killer? We don't know. We know that he would, during this phase of coming back, when he started going to the gay bars, would drug people. Right? So he was doing the drugging just like his father. His father was giving drugs to the mom. So Jeffrey seems to have picked that up. The Synthesomphone Laotians were World Vision refugees from a camp in Thailand. Again, given the shady past with World Vision, that could suggest other things. And to make that even more shady, it ties into the Catholic Archbishop of Milwaukee, who relocated the Synthesomphone family there in the vicinity of Dahmer. And I don't think I have to I'm not going out on a limb to speculate that the Catholic Archdiocese of Milwaukee probably pretty pedo corrupt. I'm going to guess. I'm going to safely assume that that's the case. Even though I haven't even studied it, I'm going to assume that that's the case, and I'm probably 99% correct. By the way, again, we got a nice crowd, 453. If you would, please hit like and share. Support the stream. You can also buy my books, Esoteric Hollywood 1 and 2, at the website jaysanalysis.com. In the shop, if you like the topic of cults, crazy things in Hollywood, blah, 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 your boy got you covered right here. Signed copies at the website in the shop. You can also subscribe to Jay's Analysis to get access to 5+ years of archive material, talks, lectures, interviews, going where no one else has gone, just like the team on Star Trek. All right, I think I hit most of what I wanted to get to in Dahmer. There appear to be high-level government connections in regard to the police department chief that sent people back to Dahmer. That's another interesting detail that has turned up. I don't have the name of that person. Another murder in 1999 of a Jeffrey Dahmer victim. So I guess even up into the 1990s, there were people connected to this case that were still dying. And the claim originally, when the police first investigated, this is another interesting detail, the police claimed to find nothing in his home, even though there was a 3-day-old corpse there. It's a little fishy there. Some of these police went on to win high awards and high ranks. Dahmer's dad, interestingly, in an interview at one point claims that his son had been brainwashed by someone. Interesting. So we'll stop there in terms of Dahmer. We're going to get in part 2 more into new details on Berkowitz. We're going to get into Michael Aquino, who you probably know of as the high-level military psyops colonel who wrote the Mind War to Psy War Army Psychological Warfare Doctrine. We're going to get into that in part 2. How he ties into Son of Sam and Berkowitz. And we're going to get into Netflix's take on Maury Terry in the recent Sons of Sam presentation. So all this stuff is like, it's crazy all this stuff's coming out, right? I mean, we did a show, 4 years ago on this topic from Dave's book? 4 or 5 years ago, right? No, I did 3 shows, 2 or 3 shows on this. One with Tim, and then 1 or 2 on my own, covering Dave's book. And wow, how far ahead of the curve was Dave, because he wrote this book in 2004, dude. He wrote this in 2004. Again, Maury Terry, of course, way before that, but we're getting, this stuff is coming out, right? I mean, the internet, you can't hide all this stuff in the age of the internet. So all this stuff's leaking out, coming out, details coming out. We saw, again, vindication of crazy conspiracy people when it came to Gacy, accomplices, connections to international and national networks, North Fox Island, Troop 137, John David Norman, Paskey, Dean Corll, Candyman, directly connected to Gacy. Gacy said that all along. And now it's out. It's true. He was right. Gacy, of all people, was telling the truth. That's been vindicated. Isn't that crazy? And we have been told by the mainstream narrative, all this bunk, all this BS, total BS. Now, it's not total BS because they'll just tell you like a little piece of it. And then you get this bogus profile that it's just random, organic, abused, messed up people. And they just happen to do crazy stuff because the system failed them. Because they didn't have the right psychiatric prescriptions. Just all this just nonsense. And they don't even give you the right, where is all the details relating to high-level connections, military training, mind control, cults, Satanism, SNUFF, prawn filming. By the way, BDSM circles comes up all the time in this stuff. Picton Pig Farm, hello. That's a huge one. I just did a super deep dive on the Picton pig farm a couple weeks ago. That's going to be its whole thing. And again, I'm going to be honest with you, some of this stuff, it's hard for me to believe, right? Even I'm like, it can't be like that. What? Come on. That's not right. So people think I'm like going out here on a limb and coming up with crazy ideas. No, it's crazier than you think. But we have to be careful. Yes, there's bogus Q-tard stuff out there that takes some of this stuff and spins it off into nonsense and makes it look stupid. So, and by the way, I did the video in 2017. I said QAnon crap was retard stuff the whole time. If you had listened to my video in 2017, you would have known. I always said it was stupid. It was always, but it has some true things in it. Yeah, every counterintelligence operation has true things in it, goofball. But it was so obvious that Q stuff was ridiculous. And by the way, emails, WikiLeaks, that's different. That's not identical to Q nonsense. They would just latch on to stuff and steer it over into kookland on purpose. Duh. If you would, please hit like and share. Let's get to some of these super chats, baby. Where y'all at? We got a greedy crash. Everybody's worried about their crypto crashing. They don't want to pay your boy tonight. Well, I went deep on all this horrible dark stuff, so need to pay your boy right here. I'm just joking. I appreciate everybody's support. We got Dr. Clown. That sounds like that's John Wayne Gacy right there. I'm stoked to catch this live, although I shudder to imagine your Dahmer impersonation. I don't have a Dahmer impersonation. I could get some. Look at my serial killer glasses laying around here somewhere, but I'm not going to do a Dahmer impression. I'm sorry. Even though you did give me $10. Ryan wins $5. Ryan wins $10. This will be way off topic when you read it, but as a kid, all my friends' parents said Aladdin, the Disney movie, was wonderful, but wouldn't have been so without Robin Williams. We were just like, totally a boomer thing. Yeah, I mean, humor is one of those great examples that, right? I mean, can you name a boomer that likes Sam Hyde? I've never seen a boomer who gets or likes Sam Hyde, right? So, perfect test case, proof case. Bob Show Steve, $5. Have you considered anything analyzing Lost City of Z? I think Jamie just watched that. Now, more relevant to tonight's would be the City of Lost Children. I mean, that one, right? Jean-Paul Jeunet and Ron Perlman. That's a crazy trafficking MK Ultra movie. We definitely need to do a City of Lost Children. I mean, I've been meaning to do that for a long time. That's a crazy movie. But, yeah, so if you want to hear more details on the Aquino story, if you want to hear more details on Sons of Sam Berkowitz, and then I think in the next installment, we're going to do probably Leonard Lake, Charles Ng, maybe Bobby Berdella. Again, you're gonna maybe Picton Pig Farm. You're gonna be blown away when you see like the patterns that are actually in these stories. I have a hard time believing it. It's just so crazy, but the world is crazier than you think. But I didn't watch Lost City of Z, so I can't. I don't know. Jamie said she enjoyed it, but we'll see. All right, anybody else? Slow night. We had a fat night the other night, right? I think everybody was magnanimous on Sunday. And we had almost 900 live. And hey, I'm glad to have over 400. We got up close to about 500 tonight, which is great for a Wednesday. Thank you guys so much. If you want the second half, it'll be up the next few days. Subscribe at Jay's Analysis, or $4.95 a month, $60 a year. Super deal. Crazy whack cool education. Wicked retarded education, as Matt Damon and Benjamin Affleck say, as they like to say. It's a wicked retarded education you get there. Wicked retarded. Everybody have a good night. Hope you enjoyed it. I can't think of any. Oh, by the way, if you haven't seen My Friend Dahmer, it actually is a good movie. I'm not trying to degrade you with weird, gross movies. My Friend Dahmer is not that gross. It was well done, pretty accurate, very comparable to the Zac Efron Bundy movie. By the way, we haven't done Bundy. We got to do Ted Bundy. I forgot about him. That's huge stuff there with Bundy. Shockingly wicked. What's the shockingly wicked something? The Netflix Ted Bundy movie is good. And it even subtly hints at some of the Dave McGowan type theory. Right? Now, not saying that Ted wasn't guilty or didn't do evil. He did, but there could be more to the story is what we're trying to get at. How do you escape prison twice, dude? I mean, come on. That's just, I don't know. I mean, is it possible to escape? Yeah, but twice? General, now $10. Have you seen Utopia? I have. I don't care for, obviously the American version is not relevant. I do promise we will do the BBC highly, highly predictive Utopia series. Now, I've only watched all of season 1. I started season 2 and then I got distracted and I didn't get back to it. Not because it's boring. I mean, it's got everything, dude. I mean, it's like, what is that anime that I tweeted out? That's crazy. We got to watch that one. We got to do Utopia. There's so many things we got to do. It's too much going on, man. It's too much. Did the cryptos crash again? I hope not. Where are we at? We got to see. Getting a little nervous. Not in the long term, in the short term. Oof. Yes, still crashing. But don't worry, long term, right? We're long term players in this game. Anyway, everybody have a good night. We'll talk to you.